Hi everybody, my name's Isabel. I'm a Webtoon Canvas creator, and today I got to attend a Webtoon seminar event for the Winter Creators Summit. It was a networking event hosted by Webtoon for Canvas creators, and at some points during the event there were over 150 creators present, chatting with each other and talking about what we're working on. So it was really wonderful. There were a few different meetings I really wanted to attend. The first one I wanted to attend was called Before and After Canvas to Originals. That first seminar was hosted by a Webtoon author who moved from Canvas to Originals, and they were joined by their Webtoon editor. So he was a member of the Webtoon staff. Out of the gate, we were told that this Canvas creator had been posting on the platform for years, and they'd tried out different comics over the years, and that this editor had already noticed them, and this editor already enjoyed what they were creating and wanted to help them continue to create it. They didn't discuss exactly how that exchange happened, but I'm assuming it was reached out through email or through a Webtoon platform of some kind. Then they began to discuss how the story changed from Canvas to Originals. And some of this was very specific to this story and to these characters, so I'm going to try to generalize it for you. The author described how wonderful Canvas had been, how it had given them many opportunities to experiment with the story and try out different plot ideas, but that there were a lot of disadvantages at the same time. While their story was on Canvas, space was used to maximize plot progression. Whereas once their story was taken to Originals, they had more space to use, which meant there were more opportunities for characters to grow and to expand those scenes to deepen the emotional significance of the scene. So some easy changes that they described was the pacing of the story. They got to extend it, they got to have longer episodes, and that allowed for them to have more panels that showed the emotional depth or the reactions of the characters to different dialogue and different changes. And they described the panel spacing and how being on Originals gave them more time to space out those panels strategically. So if they were closer together, if two panels were closer together, maybe it was more of an action scene where it was quick movement, and if they were separated more, then it was a natural slow-going scene. The biggest thing that was talked about was the assistance of the editor and how that had changed their story for the better. So the editor piped in and said, yeah, when I meet a new creator, there's a few things I ask them right off the bat. The first thing is, I want to know what's important to you. I want to know what are your goals for the story, what are the things you really want to achieve in that story. And the second thing is, what might your readers enjoy to see? And how can you add it into the story? His suggestion was adding things in early. So if you have a romance, if you want romance readers to read your story, then you might want to have a hint of romance very early on so they see that theme. Or if you want to write an action story, then you might want to have an action scene pretty early on so they can get a sense for that theme in the story. The biggest suggestion from both the author and the editor was how to plan ahead. And on Canvas, this story had been going for many years, and so the author had experimented with a whole bunch of stuff. They knew which scenes were working, which scenes maybe didn't work so much. So when the editor came in and they reworked it for Webtoon Originals, they moved a lot of stuff around and they reworked a lot of stuff. And this allowed them to make things feel more organic, to have proper foreshadowing for different events, and make the twists really good twists. Not too obvious and not too unexpected. It's a really hard middle ground to meet. So planning ahead was a really big suggestion they had. And in the chat, we were talking about a couple different things, and one of those things was planning ahead. We're like, okay, well, do we need a buffer? And some people were saying, yes, I love having 3 to 5 episodes that are finished, ready to go, so that I have the opportunity to edit them or change them if I want to, and so I can foreshadow things that are a few chapters ahead. Some people are gonna say they want their whole script done, or they want their whole outline ready to go. So definitely planning ahead will help you with the foreshadowing and the good twists and making sure you're hitting those sweet notes you want to hit. The other thing we talked a lot in the chat about was how to find an editor that you like. Because some people had had bad experiences with editors who were too harsh on them or just weren't understanding the goals of the story and what they were hoping to achieve. And getting a Webtoon editor, it's not really up to us. They have to reach out to us. But you can find editors in your everyday life. You can seek out your family members, or you can seek out your friends. And if you want to, you can seek out other Webtoon creators. We made a Google Sheets where we all put in our names and our things and ways to connect with each other so we can talk to each other. And there are several Discord servers that I'm recently joining, and I recommend you join too, that have lots of opportunities for brainstorming and collaborating and finding editors and artists and people you can work with on these stories. The second thing I joined was a networking session for romance writers, and we discussed a whole bunch of things. It was very casual, so I want to tell you about the two big takeaways. We discussed, first of all, how wonderful, healthy relationship examples are in Webtoon. Things that are slice of life, wholesome, healthy, with realistic endpoints. How wonderful it is to have that representation, and how wonderful it is for young readers to see good examples of healthy relationships on Webtoon. We were saying that's wonderful. The other thing we were talking about were the toxic relationships in Webtoon. We were talking about, problems with age gaps and how to do them well, problems with power imbalances, how to do them well, red flags, toxic behavior, enemies to lovers, how to write those in a way that will not damage impressionable young readers' ideas of what love is. It's very difficult to do. We came up with a few solutions. So regarding age gaps or power imbalances, we turned to Lore Olympus as a really good example. That author was going to work with a power imbalance and an age gap because of the myth, right? In the true myth, Hades is an all-powerful god, and Persephone is a younger, new being. And so the way this author dealt with those was by making Hades a very soft, loving individual. So this meant that he's never taking advantage of Persephone. Every step in the relationship is her choice. And of course we see that she is a more powerful being than we expected, and I'm assuming this power imbalance is just going to continue to level out if she doesn't surpass him, right? So if you're going to have a behavior like that, if you're going to have an age gap or a power imbalance, making sure that no character is being taken advantage of. As for different red flags and toxic behavior, enemies to lovers, what we suggested to each other was really focusing on character development. If you start out with a character that is demonstrating these red flags and is a very toxic individual, we want to see them grow. Maybe we don't want the readers to love them at the beginning, but we want them to love them by the end. So how can they improve themselves? How can they grow to be a better person? So you can have a healthy example by the end of the story. Of course, not all Webtoons have to be this way. Sometimes we just want to read a guilty pleasure story, and that's okay too. We also talked about slow burn, how to write a slow burn well, and we agreed it's all about the give and take. Like, you don't want to be too slow. You want to give your readers something, give them little nuggets as you go, but don't keep pulling them away. You got to give them something because they're reading for something. And we're saying you can create a slow burn without just doing miscommunication, although miscommunication is great, but it will get tiring for your readers after a while if they just keep miscommunicating with each other the whole story. So we said you can propose new conflicts. You can propose reasons why they can't be together that is beyond miscommunication. Maybe the love is an impossible love. Maybe it's immoral. There's some reason that they can't be together that creates that burn. And that's what I'm working on, because my next story, I want to do an impossible love. I want to do pining. I want to do slow burn. And I want to make sure that my readers are not getting frustrated with me, that they're not like, oh, come on, just have something happen. Because if you take too long, they do get frustrated. So you want to make sure that your slow burn is satisfying and that they're rooting for your characters without getting too frustrated. Okay, I just got back from the character building networking event, discussion event, and I've got a couple key takeaway points to share with you. So we talked a little bit more about editors and finding editors that agree with you, and how sometimes it's really nice to have people in your personal life who are outside of the genre or outside of Webtoon that you can ask for feedback on, but sometimes it's also nice having people within the genre or who enjoy reading comics or understand the nuances of the genre you're writing in to brainstorm off of as well. So finding people from both groups can be really, really useful. We also just mentioned how we are our worst critic and we are the ones who are overthinking the most, and so getting feedback from the readers through their comments or from friends or from editors can really help us figure out what needs improvement and what we're just overthinking on. The next thing we talked about is developing your characters, and we discussed a really great analogy where a writer is either an architect or a gardener. Architects plan out their whole story and their characters from the beginning, right? They make a massive plot line. They write out their exact character arc, and they're not going to compromise anything as the story goes on, whereas a gardener has a concept, but that's about it at the beginning, and then they let everything happen organically as it goes. And of course, there's pros and cons to both strategy. So we were discussing the benefits of finding a balance between planning ahead and letting things happen organically. So roadmaps can be useful, but flexibility is also important. Leaving wiggle room for that feedback, for giving the readers what they want, let the characters become more four-dimensional. And if you're having a hard time brainstorming your characters at the beginning, we talked about some general writing 101 tips, like having little worksheets where you write out, your character's traits, and how some people use like Myers-Briggs or horoscopes to give them a starting point for their characters, to make sure that they're different from each other, and how important it is to have flaws decided at the beginning. The point of a story and the point of a character arc is that your characters are going to experience a series of events that is going to allow them to grow as a person and change as a person. Hopefully for the better, but there are negative arcs too. And having those flaws at the beginning, or having those misbeliefs at the beginning, and making sure the audience is aware of what those flaws and misbeliefs are, will make it easier for your character to have natural growth and more obvious change and have an enjoyable character arc. If they're perfect from the get-go, they're not going to grow, they're not going to change, and that's not going to be very enjoyable to read. So the importance of flaws came up a bit. Okay, I just got back from the Journey of Canvas Creators discussion, which was hosted by 4 different Webtoon Canvas creators. Mostly they were just talking about their own personal experience, the different ways they had started out, and they provided a few tips. So they talked a lot about time management and burnout, and how important it is to take breaks. That a lot of your readers aren't going to realize how long it's taking you to make this comic, and how many of the Webtoon Canvas creators have full-time jobs. So like, yes, you need to go do your full-time job, but when you get home, take a break, take a breather, don't just rush right into your comic, don't just rush right into working on the next thing. They also discussed how important it is to have a buffer, because that helps with time management, and it'll help you in your daily life if events come up that get in the way and you really need a mental break, or to help prevent burnout. They also wanted to remind people that reformatting takes a lot of time. So if you're planning on putting the webtoon, the webcomic on different platforms, or if you're planning on having a physical copy, reformatting that to fit those different platforms is going to be a pain in the butt. And they recommended that you draw it in traditional comic book format, an 8x11 or something similar page format first, because then you can easily transfer it to any other format, whether it's horizontal scrolling or vertical scrolling. They started talking about character designs and how some of them base characters off of people they know as a starting point, and as the series grows, the characters sort of take on a life of their own, and how many of these authors ended up changing their characters or changing arcs or plots based on what the readers were interested in. So they were open-minded to organic change over the course, and that helped keep the comic enjoyable and successful. And lastly, they reminded people that feedback is useful. and the type of feedback is really important. So like all these other rooms, we've been talking about who to get feedback from. You can get it from people in your life, people in the genre. All that really matters is that the feedback, you're comfortable with that person, and that they're not just patting you on the back and saying you did a good job. They're actually giving you stuff to work with that can improve your story. And one of the last points they talked about was success and failure, and how important it is to make mistakes. When you start working on your story, or if you're working on one right now, just keep in mind that the art doesn't have to be perfect, that the art is going to change. Keep in mind that there are going to be bumps in the road, and that's okay, and that things can change, and that's okay. And not to give up, because there are a lot of Canvas creators that were here today online and that were talking today that tried a whole bunch of different stuff before they found something that fit. So, as long as you're creating a story that you love and that you're enjoying making and that you would want to read, there will be readers who will enjoy reading it too. And with that, that concludes the Webtoon Summit. It was really interesting. I had never gone to one before, so it was fun to talk to different Canvas creators. And it was really nice to network with a couple people. So there were a few chats open where people were sharing their links, and there's a Google Forms where people were hoping to communicate with each other. So hopefully I can connect with some creators through this and maybe get some brainstorming buddies, because I think that'd be really fun. Anyways, thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.